Hi, I'm Philip with G6 Technology Services. Today we have a 21.5-inch late 2009 iMac that the customer is saying is running slowly. After doing some diagnostics, I've determined that the hard drive is failing, so what we're going to do today is change the hard drive for a new SSD, and then do a fresh install of High Sierra, which is the latest OS version that this system can support. Then we'll use Migration Assistant to copy all the customer's data off the old hard drive. We're also going to be upgrading the system memory from 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes. So we've got all of our parts here, so let's get them opened up and see what we've got. So the first thing that we'll have should be our thermal sensor. So we'll open that up in a minute. And then our second package should have our SSD and our memory. So we've got our RAM and our 3.5 to 2.5 adapter and our SSD. So what we've got here is a 500 gigabyte Samsung 860 EVO. This system has a 500 gigabyte regular hard drive in it. It's not full, so we should be fine with this. The iMac comes with a 3.5-inch hard drive in it, so we need to have this adapter so that our 2.5-inch SSD will fit in the slot. And we've got our memory upgrade kit. So we'll be going from a total of 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes using these two 4 gigabyte modules. And then in this bag, we have our thermal sensor, which we need because the hard drive that comes with the system has a thermal sensor built into it. And if you put a non-Apple drive in there, then the fans will just be running at full speed the whole time because there's no thermal data. So now let's get our system open and we'll start upgrading some things. Okay, so here's our system. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to unplug all the accessories and the power cord. Put these out of the way. Okay, and then we'll want to lay the unit down. So there's two ways to do that. We have this way, which is not what we want, but you would want to verify on the bottom what the EMC number is, which is 2308. So then you can find the appropriate manual to follow along. So we'll go ahead and we want it flipped the other way. Okay, now that our system is laid down, normally what you'd want to do is place two suction cups on the corners and just lift the glass up because it's just held on by magnets with this model. But I don't have one of those right now, so we're going to try and just be careful and do it with the plastic opening tool. So it's important whenever you're working with any kind of finish that's easily scratched that you use plastic tools and not metal ones because you don't want to gouge the customer's finish. So what we're going to try and do is just gently lift up on the glass with the opening tool, and we'll get this glass taken off. Okay, we've got this side lifted up. use our other tool. Okay, we've got our other side lifted. So now we'll just go under this glass panel and just lift it up. And then it should come free. So we'll want to set this down somewhere that is soft, not on a scratchy surface. So I've got a bench behind me over here that I've laid down some microfiber cloths. So we'll go and set the glass down. Okay, and it looks like there was a little bit of dirt stuck under that glass, so we're just going to go ahead and blow that away. That's some dust, actually. So before we go any further, we'll just spray all this dust off the display. Okay. So if you don't work on these all the time, you might not know all the places to take screws out and things like that. So I've worked on these before, but I don't do it very often. So something that's handy to have is one of these iFixit manuals. So if you look at the bottom of the pedestal, you can get the model number and the EMC number. And these manuals will tell you where all the screws are and what size screwdriver to use and everything. So we'll be following along with this manual. So we've got the glass off. So now we're going to have to remove the screws that are holding the LCD panel in so we can pull this LCD panel off. So it says that there's 8 T10 torx. So we'll get our torx driver out. We'll find our T10 bit. There we go. So in our manual, it points out all the places with the circle where the screws are that have to come out. So we'll go ahead and just remove those. And it also tells you what size they are. So these, it says there are 8 millimeter T10 torx screws. So in this case, they're all the same. So what I like to do is just get these little clear jars, or you could just use a plastic cup or something, and just put all the screws together so we don't lose them. And then just 2 more, and then we can lift up the display panel. Oh, okay, well we'll get that later. It fell down inside there. So it's important to note as we're taking out our last screw here that there are a bunch of cables that are connecting this display panel to the motherboard inside. So you don't want to just lift this up because it'll snap off some connectors or break some cables. So now that we have our display screws out, we'll go ahead and put the lid on our little container. It has all our screws. And we'll see what's next. Okay, so we'll want to slowly, like I said, slowly lift up the display, and there's going to be a connector somewhere under here that we're going to have to remove. So it should be fairly obvious when you get the display out what's binding it down to the motherboard. Yeah, so I see that right here. And what's also nice about these manuals is it tells you exactly how to remove the cable. So it says that the vertical sync ribbon cable has a ZIF style end, but the socket has no lock or retaining flap. Simply pull away the cable from its socket towards the optical drive side of the iMac to disconnect it. So otherwise it may not be clear how to remove some of these connectors if it doesn't tell you how to do that. So we'll do like it says, and we'll just pull that away. It's hard to get to it. Okay, there we go. That cable's free now. So now we have to disconnect the LED backlight power cable. So that, again, once you start lifting it up, you can see all the cables that are getting in the way. So that's going to be right here. So we'll just wiggle that out. And then we have to remove the display data cable. On this model, it says to squeeze the two connector arms together to unlock it. Some models have a wire snap that goes over top of it, so that's another good reason to make sure you have the proper manual, so you have the right kind of connectors listed inside. So we'll get that unplugged out of here. Alright, that's out now. And then the last thing is our LCD temperature sensor, which will just pull straight out. Okay, so that'll be the last of the connectors, and this display panel should just lift out, so we'll want to carefully do that, and then before you pull away, just look again to make sure there's nothing holding it on. So we'll set this aside, and now we can see our hard drive. So we can start removing that. And also, while you've got the system open, it's a good opportunity to hit it with some compressed air and blow out some of these fans. It looks like it's pretty dusty. This is a 2009 model, so we're coming up on 10 years old here. So we'll go ahead and get this hard drive pulled out, and then I'll give it a quick blast with some of that air. So in this case, these hard drives that are in these iMacs have a thermal sensor. And I briefly talked about that earlier when I was showing you the new temperature sensor. So since our new drive, and pretty much any aftermarket drive that you would buy doesn't have that, it's usually only included on the Apple branded drives. So we have to have the external temperature sensor, otherwise the fans will just go at full blast all the time because it doesn't know how hot or cold this new drive is going to be. So we'll go ahead and just unplug this. It does say in the manual to make sure to note the orientation, so if you're going to put another hard drive back in, not change it out for an SSD, and you need to reuse this connector, then it does matter which way it goes, but in this case it looks like it's keyed anyway, so you can't put it in backwards. So we'll take that out of the hard drive side, and then we'll go ahead and unplug it from the motherboard, which will just pull straight out. And we're not going to need this anymore, so I'll just set this off to the side. Then we have our SATA power cable. We'll just wiggle that out. And then our SATA data cable, so we'll just also wiggle that out. Okay, so our hard drive is no longer plugged in. So now what we're going to need to do is remove these two torx screws here. So I'll just take a quick look in the manual to see what size screw those are. And those look like they're also a T10, so we'll go ahead and pull those out. Just put those aside, or we can get another one of our little clear containers. I like to use these, they're really handy to keep groups of screws together. You can find them online. They usually call them something like a makeup pot or something like that, but they're great for holding screws, especially if you have a bunch of them. And again, it's important to keep the sets of screws separate because although the head is the same, a T10, the other ones were 8mm and these are 9mm. So if you mix those up, you'll have some that don't seat all the way and some that go in too far. So now that we have our screws out, this hard drive should just lift up, and then you just pull it out to release the pegs that are holding it on the other side. We'll get some of this dust off of here. And then the manual says to keep this foam pad, so we'll go ahead and pull that off, and we'll see if there's anywhere for it to stick on our 3.5 to 2.5 inch bracket. Although there really isn't much adhesive left after taking that off. So now what we're going to do is we'll need to transfer over these pegs and this bracket to our adapter. And these are going to be T8 torx bits. So we'll go ahead and grab our T8 out of here. Alright, it's right here. Put these back. And I'll just set this one aside because we're going to need that again. And then while we've got this case open, I'm going to go ahead and blow this out a little bit. It does have quite a bit of dust in here, so I might just take this out into the hallway to do that so it doesn't get all over the office. So I'll blow all the dust out of this and then we'll come back. Okay, I'm glad I decided to do that. This system had quite a large amount of dust in it. So this is a good opportunity to blow out all the fans and underneath all of these boards just to clear it out. That should also help a lot with the performance so that it's not overheating so much when everything's caked with dust. So now that we have our hard drive out and our system has been dusted, we'll go ahead and transfer these brackets over to our new 3.5 to 2.5 inch adapter. So here's our adapter. We'll go ahead and get this opened up. We just have a little how-to manual in here. But it's pretty straightforward. And the support card. So we'll just go ahead and stick these back in here. And it does come with a nice selection of screws in case you don't have them. So if we look at this bracket, we can see that it lines up with the holes that the new SSD would use. And there's this notch where our data and power connectors would go. So it's going to be kind of like this. So we'll want to put these brackets on this side and these pins on this side. Once we have the pin out, it'll just screw into this little slot here. Like that. Actually, I think we'll want to have this the other way. So if we put it in like this, if we put it in like that, then the fan is just blowing against this bracket. But if we have it in like this, then it'll come over top of it. So we'll go ahead and put this pin on the other side, but we do still want our notch to be on the side with all of the connectors. Okay, we'll just make sure all of our pins are in here nice and snugly. And then it's time to mount the solid state drive in the bracket. So we'll go ahead and set this drive off to the side, get it out of our way. And we'll move some of this packaging for now. And so now we've got our temperature sensor and our solid state drive, which we'll have to slice into. They have it taped shut. So they give you a little booklet, which we don't need. It'll just have an installation guide and warranty statement. So here's what we came for. So this is going to be our solid state drive. Just put this packaging out of the way. And now it's time to put our solid state drive in our bracket. So the side that has all the connectors on it, we'll want to have on the side with the notch. So we'll just go ahead and put that, line it up in there. It'll sit just like that in the side of our bracket. And we'll use some of our included screws to secure it. Just test fit our screw to see if it's the right one. They did include several different types. That doesn't look like it. Let's give this one a try. Yeah, that one fits perfectly. So these look like what you would use to attach the bracket to the chassis if it was a Windows computer or something, and then these are the smaller ones that we have to attach the SSD to the bracket. So I'll hang on to these extra screws in case we need them again, but we won't need them for this repair or this upgrade. So since we have so many, I'll go ahead and put 4 in here. Probably doesn't need that many if you don't have them. It would probably be fine with just 1 or 2, because this type of machine doesn't get moved around very often. It actually looks like this bracket can hold 2 of these, so we'll just go with the lower socket. The screwdriver bit is too small, so we'll use a larger one. And we'll go with the Phillips number 0. So then we have this little pass-through we can put our screwdriver in. Okay, we want to get it snug, but don't overdo it. And now we can see where this cutout lines up with our data and power connectors. Okay, and now we have our adapter with the SSD in it and the Apple mounting points on it. So we're ready to install this back into the system. I'm just gonna wipe some of this dust and other residue off the desk real quick. Okay, so this will just go back on in the opposite order that it was removed. And so we'll just insert these two pegs right into two little areas there. And then our bracket will line up nicely with our little screw holes here. So we'll get our T10 back out, which I set off to the side so we can get it quickly. We'll go ahead and put these two hard drive bracket screws back in. And again, we just want to snug them down. We don't want them too tight. We don't want to strip the threads or crack any of this plastic, because this is just screwing into plastic. Okay, and then now we have to put our temperature sensor on the SSD. So how this will work, it comes with this little board. So this is basically a SATA power pass-through cable, and they just tap off of a couple of the leads to give this board power. And this board has the temperature sensor, and then it uses this red and black connector to plug in where this black and gray temperature cable was plugged into our hard drive. So it'll be sending our system temperature data off this little board here. And it does come with some wax paper on the back because there's adhesive. So we'll want to remove that paper and stick it on. But before we do that, just to make things a little bit easier to work with, I'm going to get the connector plugged in, this big SATA power cable first, in case I need to move something. And these are keyed. There's a little L on one side, so it only goes on one way. So if it doesn't work, just look for that and flip it around. So we have our power cable that will plug into our SSD. And then we'll plug the system power cable into our pass-through adapter. We'll just tuck that nicely out of the way. And we can go ahead and plug in our SATA data connector, which is the smaller of the two. And that's going to sit upside down on this drive, with the cable pointing up. I think we'll have a better angle on this if we wrap it around that power cable. There we go. So we have our cables nicely secured. And at this point, our hard drive temperature connector is over here, so we'll just hold that there, and then we'll route this cable and just see where this will sit nicely. So yeah, we'll have plenty of room. So we'll go ahead and make this connection, and then we'll take the paper off of the back of this board and stick it to the SSD. So I think we're in there all the way. It doesn't look like it's seated completely, but I don't think the other one was like that either. These neighboring ones have a gap, so I think we're good there. So now we'll peel off the backing from this adhesive. And then our manual says to stick it down near the connectors. So we will do that. Just stick it right on this SSD, right near these connectors. Just press it down, make sure it's secure. And then we'll move some of these cables out of the way. And we'll tuck this power cable down under here. And so there we have it. We've got our new SSD installed and the bracket nice and secure. And we've got our temperature sensor on top. So I'll just flip it over real quick so you can see that. Hopefully it's in the frame here. So we have our temperature sensor, and this is our pass-through cable over here. And then our red and black temperature sensor data cable running back down the board here. And our SSD sitting securely in the bracket. So now that we have that all situated, basically you just follow the manual in reverse and put the display back on and then the glass. And we'll go ahead and install that RAM, which is actually really nice to get to. It's right on the bottom. So, oh yeah, we have this foam, so we can just stick that back on here. Doesn't really have much adhesive left on it. And just see where that was. That was actually closer to here. So okay. Now that we have all of our internals buttoned up, we'll just follow this manual in reverse, put everything together. We've already made all of our connections. We've reattached the hard drive connector. So now we can grab our LCD panel and start reconnecting all of the connectors. And it's a good idea to follow the manual in reverse to put it back together, because sometimes the connectors or the wires can get hidden and you won't see it, and then you'd get everything all reassembled and then something wouldn't work. So following the manual backwards is a good step, because then you know you're following all the same steps again. Okay, so we've retrieved our LCD panel from our secure storage location, and we'll just insert that gently back into place. We'll have it propped up slightly so we can see there are 4 cables that we'll be plugging back in. Actually, the back of this is very dusty. I didn't dust this when I did the rest of it, so I'm just going to take this out into the hallway for a second and dust it. Okay, so now we're ready to insert it back into the case. And then we'll start reconnecting our cables. So the first thing that we'll reconnect is our LCD temperature sensor, which again is one of those things. Any of these temperature sensors, if you forget to plug it in, it'll make the fan spin at full speed, just as a fail-safe, because if the system doesn't know how hot things are, it has to assume the worst to try and keep it cool. So we'll want to make sure that that gets plugged back in securely so that we have a reasonable noise level with the fans. And that should just plug straight in. I'm just going to use this plastic tool, the flat end of it, to help push that cable the rest of the way in. so we've got that in place. So now we'll go back and see what the next thing is. And they want us to connect the display data cable, so that's the big wide one in the middle here. Okay, I think we might finally have that in the rest of the way, so I'll go ahead and tip this back over. That was not enjoyable in the least. Now we have our backlight power. We'll go ahead and plug that in. This is our LCD thermal sensor, I think, or maybe it isn't. It just plugs straight in. Just let this down gently. That was the vertical sync ribbon cable, actually. I'm just going to make one more quick inspection to make sure everything's seated nicely. Okay, everything does look like it's plugged in all the way. So we'll go ahead and let this display down gently. And it should be lining up perfectly with all of the mounting points. So then we can go ahead and start putting our screws back in. Which reminds me, actually, we had a few that ran away, so we'll have to use this opportunity to get those back. And I do see them. One got stuck to this magnet. Got that one out. This other one fell down inside here. Got that one. Now we've got all of our runaway screws back. Go ahead and seat this back in there again. Make sure I didn't pull any cables out. And go ahead and let this display down gently. And it should line up nicely with all of the mounting points. So now we can go ahead and start putting these screws back in. There, now we've got that 8th screw in. Need this manual anymore, so I'll put that out of the way. And we'll grab a microfiber cloth, some cleaning spray. I like to use this 3M. What's the model number on here? CL600. You can get it at Office Depot. Anti-static electronic equipment cleaner. Does a real good job. Doesn't leave residue behind. We want to try and get dust off the rag before we do that. And you always want to spray onto the rag and not onto the equipment, because this limits where this spray might end up. If you spray it right on the equipment, it might end up down inside of here and could short something out or cause some other undesirable effect. So we're just going to give this display a quick little wipe here just to get any residue off, so it's nice and shiny when we put the glass back on, which we will also be cleaning. off any dust. And then we'll get our glass. So our main piece of glass does have some residue on the inside of it. That looks like there was some dust that built up and then it fell down in there. So we're going to carefully try to clean this glass. Okay, that looks a lot better. So we'll go ahead and put our display glass back on. So what we have to do now is just line up these tabs with the corresponding slot on the bottom. And it'll go in at a slight angle. And then you just slowly let it down and it should snap right into place. Just like that. And so we'll put these extra cloths away. And we'll just grab this one and we'll just clean the front of this real quick while we've got it here. Go ahead and flip it around the other way so we can change our RAM. And for that, we just have some Phillips screws. So we'll just lift this up a bit so we can access those. Just back these out. Looks like this screwdriver is just still a hair too small, so we'll try this other one. That's a lot better. Okay, we have our access panel off. And then to remove these, I don't know if you can see that. We just have these plastic tabs that come down, and you just pull on it. I have to set this down, I can't get enough leverage on it. They are pretty difficult to pull, so if it feels like it's stuck, probably just need a little bit more pressure. Okay, sorry if you couldn't really see that. It's kind of hard to work at that angle. So we'll go ahead and just lift this back up for the next part. So what we'll do is grab our new RAM and we'll install it, which we have right here. Okay. I'll just take these out. And I just like to compare the groove to the new ones to make sure it lines up, and they do. And then we'll just put these old ones back in the package here. And we'll give the customer the opportunity to take them if they want. Otherwise, we'll hang on to them. Might be able to use them for something. put this out of the way. And we can install our new RAM, which again is a little bit difficult to access, or to show you the angle. We don't want this one to get smashed. So then we just put it in the socket under here. And then once it's in, you can just push it firmly. Really should do that evenly on both sides, so I'm just going to put that down for a second. Okay, we just push it evenly on both sides. Okay, we'll just do the same thing there, just push it evenly. And we'll put our bracket back on. It still has a little bit of dust in there. Get rid of that. We'll need our yellow screwdriver. Let's see if this says what size it is. Yeah, number 1 Phillips has been working well for us here. So we'll just go ahead and put this back on. Lift up the display a little bit. So that should do it for the physical stuff. So now we'll get our diagnostic software and see if it boots up. So I want to get our power cord. Keyboard and mouse. And in case anybody's wondering, these are just our testing keyboard and mouse. The customer does have the correct white Apple ones. And in case you didn't know, you can just use a standard Windows keyboard and mouse with the Mac. Grab our USB diagnostics. And then to get into the startup manager, well, first we have to turn our power on. Then we'll press our power button and we'll hold down Option, which on the Windows keyboard is going to be Alt. Okay, and we've got our install macOS Sierra, so I grabbed the wrong flash drive. See what's on this one. Okay, this is our diagnostic software. So we'll just wait for that to boot up. Okay, now we'll start up our diagnostics. Alright, and let's see what we've got. Memory test, 8 gigabytes are detected, so we'll just test that to make sure everything's working. And our 500 gigabyte Samsung SSD is detected. So it's brand new, so that should be fine, but we'll go ahead and just get our smart values on there just to make sure. So this is going to take a few minutes, so we'll just come back when this is finished. Okay, so our memory test passed, so that's a good thing. And we'll notice this system does have 4 memory slots, but the way that I've done it here, this system is compatible with up to 16 gigs of memory. So instead of just adding a couple of 2 gig sticks to get it back up to 8, I've replaced the existing 2 gig sticks with 2 4 gig sticks, so that way if they want to bring it back to 16 or bring it up to 16, then they just have to get 2 more to add to it and not have to replace the entire kit. So yeah, cost is about the same either way. So let's just do one more thing. There's a sensor test on here. Since we did change that temperature sensor, let's just run this and make sure that it can read it. Okay, so we'll go under temperature, and yep, hard drive. We do have readings for the hard drive temperature sensor. It looks like everything else does too. LCD has one, so we didn't knock anything loose. So now let's go ahead and get our operating system installed. Okay, so this one has Sierra. Let's see if there's anything on these. I don't know if I have one with High Sierra. No, that one's not bootable. That one's got Mojave, but this won't run that. So, looks like we'll go with Sierra, and then I'll just upgrade it after. So we'll just let that start up, and then we'll come back. All right. So we'll just hop into disk utility real quick just to make sure our disk is still showing up. Yep, have our nice 500 gigabyte Samsung. So let's go into install Mac OS. We'll get that started. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have to format this disk first, since it's not wanting to show up as an option. Okay. So all I did there is you just go back into disk utility and just select the SSD in the left column, and then you just go to erase, and then that way it'll show up in our disk options on the screen here. Yeah, there we go. And install. So that'll take a little while, so we'll just let that run. And then after that's over, we'll get the system set back up. We'll get this upgraded to High Sierra, since I didn't have the installed drive for it handy. And then after it's all up to date, we'll get the customer's data backed up or restored onto here from the old hard drive. So we'll come back when this is finished. Okay, so we'll just run through basic setup here. And then we'll just give it a wired network connection for now. Okay, we've got a network connection. We're showing our 8 gigs of RAM. And then our 3.06 gigahertz Core 2 Duo. And let's see, storage. Yep, we got our 500 gig SSD showing up there. So now I just have to get the installer for High Sierra. And we'll let that upgrade. Wonder if that will be available here if I have to find it elsewhere. Yeah, they're not listing it in the App Store anymore, so we have to go to the support article and get the URL. So it's right there in this Apple support article, so we can download it. Alright, that's downloading. Okay. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. And we'll let that upgrade. Okay, looks like our software update is finished, so let's just log in here. Okay, we're now running High Sierra. So at this point, we can migrate the customer's data off that old hard drive. So we'll start by opening Migration Assistant. And then I'll go get that old hard drive. Okay, so here's our old hard drive that we removed. So what we'll need to do is use our SATA to USB adapter so we can plug it in to the computer. I guess I put in this box. So commonly you'll see this type of SATA to USB adapter, and this kind is really only good for SSDs and 2.5-inch hard drives because it's bus powered and you sometimes can't get enough power out of it to start up and run the 3.5-inch drive. So what we're going to use is this externally powered adapter. So we have a small laptop-like IDE and full-size IDE, and then our SATA is on the end. So we have this little SATA cable. We just plug that into here, and this plugs into the hard drive, and then we've got our external power supply to power our SATA drive. So then we'll use this first option from a Mac and then hit continue. And then our hard drive should show up here in this list after it mounts on the system. Okay, now we're getting some activity. Yep, and there our drive has showed up here. So we can click on that and click continue. And then what we're going to end up doing here is I'm not going to copy any of the applications or other files or computer network settings. We'll copy the users folder. That's about 60, oh, it's still calculating, it's at 70 gigabytes now. So we don't have to wait for it to finish calculating. We're only going to copy this user account. It's already up to 150 gigs, so we can go ahead and just hit continue. And then it's going to go ahead and, well, I guess it didn't have a password, so we'll just give it one. Just use password and I'll let the customer change it when they come to pick it up. And we'll continue. And once our admin password, continue again. Okay, and it's copying, so we'll wait for that to finish, which hopefully will not be too long, and then that should be the end of it. We'll just do a quick test just to make sure everything copied all right, and then it'll be ready to go. Okay, so it's the next day. That was taking a long time, so I just left and came back. So let's see, there is some incompatible software, so that's fine. We'll just let it skip that. And it's complete. So we'll go ahead and hit quit. And our new account has been migrated from that old hard drive. It's right here. So we'll just take a quick peek and make sure that everything looks like it copied over. Okay, looks like we're all set. So we'll get all this stuff put away. I'll let the customer take this hard drive with them as a backup. I don't have any need for it. And we'll get this returned, and it was a successful repair.